The drawbacks of being an investment banker. David Jaffee with BestStockStrategy.com. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the drawbacks of being an investment banker. And I know that a lot of people want to say that working on Wall Street is so amazing, that they make so much money, and that they learn things extremely quickly and all that stuff. But I'm going to tell you the real deal drawbacks of being an investment banker. So the first thing, and this is by far the most important and deleterious aspect of working as an investment banker, and that is the amount of stress that you endure. Now, the hours are bad when you work as an investment banker, but even if I'm working like 85 hours a week, if I'm in front of the computer and I'm watching sports or I'm on ESPN.com, that's not going to stress me out. The stress of investment banking is by far the worst thing that you have to endure. And one of the main reasons why it's so stressful is that you can't go home too early, even if you're not working on something. So even if I didn't have anything to do, the earliest that I can leave will be 10 o'clock, because I remember that one time I left before 10 o'clock, and then the next day, my managing director thought that I didn't have enough work to do. And then he hit me with a ton of assignments that pretty much cluttered up my calendar over the next month. So the stress of not knowing when you're going to leave, and also the fear of knowing that at any time, even if it's 11 p.m. at night, you can receive an email that's going to keep you there until 4 o'clock in the morning. That constant fear and the stress just slowly erodes your mental health to the point where you become extremely unhealthy. The next thing is, like I said earlier, I touched upon the hours, and the hours are really bad. The problem with the hours is that it pretty much necessitates that you sacrifice everything. So as far as relationships or having a girlfriend or anything like that, your work is always going to take priority over anything that you do. And as a result, because of the hours, it's going to be very difficult for you to actually have any social life whatsoever. Well, I guess it depends upon what group you're in. But for the most part, if you're in like M&A, leverage finance, or in the groups that I was in, such as Industrial Growth and Services or CIBC World Markets, you really are not going to have any social life, because all your time is going to be spent at work, even on the weekends. The next thing is that even though you're making a lot of money, from a dollar per hour basis, you're really not making that much. You're probably making around $20, $25 an hour. And because I was living in New York City, and New York City has some of the highest taxes in the country, my bonuses were taxed at about 52 to 54%. And also my salary was taxed pretty heavily. So on a dollar per hour basis, you're really not making that much. The next negative is your coworkers. I remember working with this director at the time. His name was Jeff O'Malley. I think right now he's like an executive vice president at Santander. He was so miserable. Everyone hated him. The analysts, the associates hated him. And he had such negative energy that no one wanted to be near him. And the problem with that is that he wasn't the only one. Because all of your coworkers are miserable and the majority of them regret actually becoming an investment banker, then there's going to be so much negativity and stress in your work environment that it's just going to act as like a constant self-fulfilling prophecy where you start hating your life. Well, and I'm sure some of you are going to ask, well, if you hate it so much and it's so horrible, why don't you just quit? Well, here's the thing. They play psychological games at the investment bank where they convince you that you're so lucky to even have an investment banking job, and that there are 1,000 people who would gladly take your position, that even though you're miserable, because everyone that you're with and that you're working with is also miserable, it's like a group of deplorables who are struggling towards a common goal together. And everyone there is miserable, and no one wants to defect from the group, and no one wants to seem like they're weak, and everyone's being brainwashed and told that they're so lucky to have that job, where you'd be pretty surprised that a lot of people don't quit as much as you would think that they would. Obviously, there's a very high burnout rate. Probably 50% of the first-year analysts do not make it to a second year. However, I can tell you that many people watching this video, from the way that I'm describing investment banking, think that the number of analysts who would quit would be closer to about 90%, but it's not. A lot of people do not quit because they get brainwashed into thinking that they're actually lucky to endure their suffering, and they simply accept that this is going to be their new life from now on. They're going to have to endure constant stress, constant depression, and just a lot of negativity in their life for as long as they're an investment banker. The next thing is that there's a lot of coping mechanisms. I never got into drugs or alcohol. Ironically, I've never been drunk before, but I did start taking antidepressants. So I guess I did start taking drugs, but I never took any illegal drugs. But I do know that some of my friends in investment banking were taking Adderall. A lot of them were also taking cocaine. Alcohol is not that prevalent with analysts and associates. Alcohol is more prevalent with managing directors. And the reason is that if you come in drunk as an analyst or associate, you're going to get spoken to. And if you do that like 2 or 3 times, you're going to get fired. Whereas with managing directors who are not at the office as much, they can engage in alcohol abuse much more readily than an analyst. For an analyst, it was much more prevalent for them to take Adderall or cocaine in the bathroom because that would enable them to get their work done, and it wouldn't necessarily be something that many of their other analysts would be able to pick up on. So yeah, these are the cons and the drawbacks of being an investment banker. I made a prior video of what the pros are of working as an investment banker. My overall thoughts are that if you have the opportunity, I do believe that you should be an investment banker for about 6 months. And after that time, your learning curve is going to start to plateau. And I do believe that after about 6 to 12 months, it is in your best interest to move over to the buy side. The buy side would be something like working at a private equity shop or working at a hedge fund, because the lifestyle at a private equity shop or at a hedge fund is better. How much better? I think it really depends upon which shop you go to. And I do think that it's overstated how much better life on the buy side is. I can tell you that it's probably about 20 or 30% better. It's not significantly better, because I remember when I was working on the Metals USA deal and we were working with Apollo Management, and the other analysts and associates from Apollo were at the office at 3 or 4 in the morning as well. So it's not significantly better, but it's probably about 20 or 30% better and 20 or 30% less stress when you're working on the buy side. David Jaffee with BestStockStrategy.com. Let me know your thoughts on whether you believe that it's best to be an investment banker. Let me know your thoughts on whether you want to be an investment banker, whether it's not a career choice that you would ever indulge in. If you have any questions, then leave a comment below.